What you're hearing is similar to what thousands at least have reported hearing at night across Ontario over the last week or so. Experts call them cryoseisms or frost quakes. The conditions created by the recent ice storm are perfect for them.
All of that water that seeped into the ground now is freezing. And as you know, water takes up a lot more space when it's a solid. And that expansion can create a lot of noise.
Now, the good news in all of this is that experts both here at the Science Centre and at Environment Canada say there's no real danger to frost quakes. They're about the equivalent of a small earthquake.
Thousands of residents woke with a bang this morning after a series of earthquakes rocked the state. Many have told of their fear and confusion as the shockwaves rumbled through the suburbs.
It felt like an explosion.
Sort of a loud bang and the house shook.
It sounded like
An update to the mysterious loud booms heard throughout Colonial Heights and Chesterfield over the past week. Since our story aired yesterday, we've received hundreds of calls, emails, and Facebook posts from our CBS 6 viewers.
What kind of surprised me the most is seeing how widespread this is. It's not really confined just to Colonial Heights and southern Chesterfield. It's far-reaching.
And while some believe it may be some sort of cold-related tremor, the average temperature last week was nearly 40 degrees.
People who live here say it sounded like a massive explosion, but experts say it was likely caused by the extreme temperatures over the last couple of days.
Sorry if it's really dark. I turn on my outdoor visibility on my phone. I don't think it's working.
There is simply no let-up. Huge waves are already battering the coast of Devon, with forecasters predicting yet more flooding and more misery. More than 100 flood warnings are now in place across the UK.
Elsewhere near the capital Lisbon, the swell was so bad, huge pools of foam like this started washing up along the shore.
Entire centres of some coastal towns have been inundated. Recent weeks in Western Europe have seen repeated bouts of stormy weather. Just before Christmas, high winds downed trees and knocked out power to hundreds of thousands of homes in France and Britain. It's raising concerns that the weather patterns this side of the Atlantic
huge and bitter
worse.
Winter storm in America, which has sent temperatures to their lowest levels for decades. The so-called polar vortex occurs at the Earth's poles. It's an anti-clockwise rotating pool of frigid, dense air with a calm centre, would you believe? The air, which is stuck in one place, gets colder and denser, and then when the winds encircling the air breaks down, they move away from the pole, or they can do, and unusually this Arctic air is heading south across Canada and into the United States.
Well, a polar vortex is a sort of almost like a hurricane that forms over the poles, the Arctic in this case.
And this is the view from space. The NASA image shows the enormous scale of the vortex, covering most of the United States, with only some extreme southern places, such as parts of Florida, escaping the snowstorms.
In this time right now, we are getting it all the way into the United States. It does not happen all that often for that that kink in the jet stream to allow it. That's why we're having the coldest air in decades. And perhaps you've heard this before, but this morning, Minneapolis, 22 below. The surface of Mars last week was 20 below, so it's actually colder.
A dangerous Arctic blast crippling the country, plunging temperatures to record-breaking
Weather,
lows.
the flooding, 24 hours of non-stop rain, and the fierce winds coming with it. Just look at the view from above tonight, nearly 2 feet of rain falling in Florida. These images from Delray Beach. Further north, fierce winds and reported funnel clouds destroying these homes in Raleigh, North Carolina. Unreal. Just before families could even move into those homes, the devastating damage coming in. And look at these images. The frozen rivers beginning to melt across this country, now threatening to spill over, including New Jersey's Delaware River there, and in Pennsylvania, blocks of ice beginning to move on the Susquehanna River. While in the northwest tonight, a powerful storm hitting while we're on the air, tens of thousands already in the dark. Powerful winds hitting both coasts, a storm brewing in the west and in the east. Look at this tonight. In Raleigh, North Carolina, 86-mile-an-hour winds breaking a record.
Officials in Tonga have confirmed one person has been killed as a result of Tropical Cyclone Ian, but they're unable to say if the death toll is likely to rise.
The Category 5 cyclone caused widespread damage at the weekend. The Tongan Prime Minister says thousands of people have been left homeless.
Winds gusting up to 287 kilometres per hour left parts of Ha'apai Islands flattened.
The head of Tonga's disaster management team says it's a miracle that only one person was killed given the extent of the devastation. The most powerful storm to have hit the island in half a century.
Tonight, a strong earthquake rattled the island of Puerto Rico overnight. The earthquake had a magnitude of 6.5 and it struck just after midnight, about 34 miles north of Atillo. That's off the northern coast. Dozens of people reported fallen items in their homes and feeling the buildings sway in the capital of San Juan, around 59 miles from the quake's epicenter.
Let's head over to the Philippines. At least 20 people have been killed and thousands displaced as 2 days of heavy rains set off floods and landslides in the southern Philippines. 13 people are reportedly missing. Officials said the flooding has affected over 100,000 people from 10 provinces and prompted about 10,000 to flee to safer ground. Many homes were submerged and bridges damaged.
At least 13 people are dead and 2 more are missing after torrential rain hit the Indonesian island of Sulawesi.
About 40,000 people were forced to flee their homes. Flooding in the north of Sulawesi province was caused by torrential rains. In the province capital of Manado, banks of 4 rivers flooded part of the city. The rains caused landslides which crushed several houses in the province. 4 bridges were destroyed.
Heavy rains have also flooded roads in Jakarta, the country's capital.
It's the middle of summer in Australia and they're struggling with temperatures in some places reaching 115. The heat sparked wildfires. It's put a strain on power grids, forced a delay of almost 4 hours at the Australian Open in Melbourne, a move welcomed by the players who had complained about what one of them called inhumane playing conditions in the heat.
Temperatures have been incredibly high, close to hitting record levels. Add to that low levels of rain recently, and forests are bone dry.
Heat wave.
The only thing falling from the skies may be bats.
This is a small section.
The country's Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals confirmed last week 100,000 bats were killed in the heat wave, a number that's continued to grow.
In California, a state of emergency is now in effect because of the extreme drought there, and those drought conditions are fueling a destructive wildfire that's been burning for days northeast of Los Angeles.
The fiery images coming out of California this week seem to defy the calendar. This winter wildfire east of Los Angeles is a symptom of the drought that now covers parts of 11 states, including the majority of California, seeing the least amount of rainfall in more than a century.
Don't know what this means, but we can show you an extraordinary photograph of an extraordinary lightning strike at the Christ the Redeemer statue that towers over the city of Rio. More than just an outburst of nature, it apparently caused damage. The local newspaper is reporting it cracked part of a thumb on one of the arms of the famed statue.
Record rainfall in southeastern France has led to floods in which 2 people have died, 1 person in his cellar
Another was swept away in his car, while it's reported a third person is missing. One woman told how her empty car was washed away by a huge wave. Prime Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault visited the area, where the mud and silt from the River Gappo, which burst its banks, caused significant damage.
More than a month's rain has fallen on the city of Nice in just 4 days.
The heavy rains also lashed parts of northern Italy, where one man was killed and another is reported as missing.
Now, molten rock and ash are still spewing into the sky from an Indonesian volcano that refuses to quiet down. And more than 22,000 people have been displaced, while enormous ash clouds float up from the mountain and settle over villages. After a 3-year slumber, the volcano rumbled back to life in September. It has erupted hundreds of times since then.
New Zealand's capital Wellington has escaped without major damage after being shaken by a 6.3 magnitude earthquake. It's left North Island residents rattled as they brace for aftershocks.
A bit of an earthquake going on here, a very big earthquake in fact. We've got a very large earthquake going here. The race is underway here.
The region escaped without major damage, just one serious mess, further unnerving New Zealanders who, in the wake of the deadly Christchurch quake, live in fear of the big one.
Here in Nevada, state officials say they're convinced a Sparks marina where an estimated 100,000 trout, bass, and catfish died poses no danger to human or animals. Environmental and wildlife officials say there has been no sign of any contamination like pollutants.
84 million of us are facing a polar freeze together again. Ice, snow, stinging winds, warnings up from North Carolina to New England. Chicago's famous waterway, a polar obstacle course. The federal government shut down the Washington Monument shrouded in white.
People waking up across the Northeast this morning to record-breaking snowfall and now frigid Arctic winds.
Some cities in the Midwest are below zero, and today's high temperatures may struggle to reach double digits.
Boston will see a high of 16 on top of more than a foot of snow. It'll be 19 in Cleveland, 18 in St. Louis, 9 in Chicago, and only 0 today in the Twin Cities. A storm emergency is still in effect this morning in Philadelphia as the city starts to clear away more than a foot of snow. Schools, government offices, and many businesses are closed.
This was a clipper system, but it wasn't our normal clipper. It transferred some energy to a coastal low, throwing back bands of heavy snow along I-95.
The snow and bitter cold temperatures stretch for more than 1,000 miles across the Northeast and Midwest right now.
A blaring reminder that this winter is no joke.
The polar freeze is back, bringing parts of the country to a standstill, and meteorologists say this is just the beginning.
A growing number of pilot whales found dead off the coast of southwest Florida. A total of 33 have died since Monday, 25 just today.
You know, today's whales found on Kais Island in Collier County, just a few miles south of Marco Island. They were part of a pod found stranded near Naples over the weekend.
And a separate pod still struggling to survive off the Lee County coast tonight, right near Lover's Key. 8 in that group have either died or had to be euthanized.
Blair Mays with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration say the pilot whale strandings these past 2 months have been anything but normal. The investigation is now focusing on why. NOAA is even checking with the Navy on any recent sonar activity.
This is something you want to see. Lots of North Texans reported a meteor sighting last night, and this, to the left of your screen, you see that little ball falling down? It could be one. Video on YouTube shows a bright light falling from the sky around 7 o'clock. Dozens of meteor sightings are coming in from Texas to Kansas and even as far away as Oregon.